All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So today we're doing a lunch and learn on using AI to assist you with your work. This was kind of a product of rolling out the AI policy. And during that, a lot of people expressed interest in how I and Kyle and a couple other people that have mentioned that we're using AI already to do some of our work. We're using that and how we were like doing it without violating our own terms. So I wanted to show you guys how some ways that you can use AI, and if you've never used it before, ways that will optimize your use of it. So we're just going to go through definitions again. I'm going to go through the guidelines that are in the AI policy again, because I think that's the most important thing from my point of view that you guys know. And then we're going to talk about how to access AI tools, prompt engineering, tips and tricks, and then we're going to do a couple of examples. So artificial intelligence refers to the utilization of machine learning and technology, software automation and algorithms that enables tasks and rulemaking based on existing data sets and instructions. So AI means lots of things. We're not just talking about like ChatGPT, although that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. But AI is like any kind of system that works with that. And an AI system uses machine learning to then generate outputs. So a system is like what uses AI. The most common type of system that is currently really like kind of broken through is a large language model, which are deep learning models that are pre-trained on vast amounts of data. So like they gave ChatGPT essentially the internet. And essentially it's really good at predicting the best choice for the next word. So like think of it like advanced autocomplete, and we're going to talk about that again a little bit. Interfaces for interacting with LLMs are often referred to as GPTs, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And I didn't know that, and I looked that up today. But it's more just useful for you guys to know a lot of things are now called GPTs. And what they're talking about is a way of accessing this specific type of artificial intelligence system. Yeah, so I think on the next slide. Again, this is like a little bit of a review from our discussion about the AI policy a couple months ago, and you guys signed the policy, so you may have read this as well. In open AI systems, the input provided by all users is used to train the AI model. So like everything that you type in is part of its body of knowledge. It learns from what you're typing. In closed AI systems, input from a single user is used to train its AI model. So basically, one of the big differences that you'll see here is that like in an open AI system, you can get any answer. Like you can ask it any question, you'll get an answer to it. A closed AI system you've definitely interacted with before. Think of like customer service chatbots. So like you ask it a question and it's like, you seem like you're talking about closing your account. Is this correct? Like it only has this like limited body of information and it makes inferences from it and it only provides certain answers. They can appear less advanced, but they're not necessarily, and they can be used for things like there are some programs that are like therapy adjacent where you can talk to a bot, but its answers are limited because it doesn't want to encourage you in a bad way. Confidential information should never be entered into any AI system. That's like a rule for SBP. It's just good practice. Given most AI systems you're interacting with are open AI systems especially, you do not want employee information, financial information, client data, legal or regulatory matters, partnership or vendor agreements, or strategic plans to be entered into its body of knowledge. There's a number of reasons why, but the most important thing is just not to do it. So, and then these are the general guidelines from that policy as well. Confidential information should not be entered into any AI system. AI serves only as a tool. It's not to replace domain knowledge. AI-generated content is a starting point, not the final output. All AI-generated content should undergo thorough review by an expert and must align with SVP's brand and voice. So you can't like be like, hey, write a grant proposal for me. You can't do that. You can have it assist you with parts of the grant proposal. You could have it write a draft and then you go over it and make sure that it reflects our language and voice. But you can't just have it do your job. AI tools may not be used as a replacement for expert advice, especially in matters involving safety or legality. So like, don't put a building plan into ChatGPT and ask if it looks safe. That's not okay. AI tools cannot be used to do your job for you. And the use of AI tools should be disclosed when it's relevant to your intended audience. So like if your boss assigned you something and like it's not just like a information gathering task, but it's something where you're going to be judged on your writing or something, and you let ChatGPT write the entire thing for you, you don't go back and edit it, you need to tell your boss that. It's important to like, it's basically like citing your sources. And then the other reason it's important is because we'll talk about this a little bit later, but AI does not have to like quote unquote tell you the truth. So disclosing that you used it to assist you can be helpful. While it feels like you're deferring to expertise, generally your supervisor is going to be more of an expert on the area. So again, when we talked about the AI policy, we had talked about we were going to develop a process for approving AI tools. We have not yet done that. Like the goal is to have like an interdepartment board that would weigh in on this and then like review items for security and safety. So right now, what is approved are embedded existing tools. So like Adobe has that AI assistant that very annoyingly pops up in the corner when you open a document. You're allowed to use that. You can also use like spell check in Office. Those are integrated tools and you're welcome to use them. Another tool that we're using organizationally is the Scribe AI SOP tool. We're going to be rolling that out into more of the organization as well. That's a paid license. So that has to be with supervisor approval. And those two types of tools, those companies have already been vetted for us to be confident that nothing horrible is going to happen. Like Scribe has a redaction feature. So it's okay if it sees my screen because it redacts it. And I also know that they don't store images that are not redacted. Microsoft Copilot is one of the other usable tools, and ChatGPT is the other one that we're going to talk about mostly today. They're both large language models that you interact with in a chat format, and they're both totally okay to use with no sensitive information, as long as you like don't tell it like the SBP strategic plan or copy and paste your budget in it or put it in client's address and like all their information, you're fine. So I want to talk about ChatGPT a little bit because I keep mentioning it, and I don't want to assume everyone knows what ChatGPT is. So ChatGPT was created by OpenAI, and they're an organization focused on developing and advancing artificial intelligence in a safe and beneficial manner. Part of it is a nonprofit, actually, and their goal is there's like a lot of ethics concerns with AI for obvious reasons. So one of their focuses is creating like a safe way of accessing AI. It also means that they like are providing access to their models that can be used by other developers. It's not open source, but you can use their tools within your product. So it's the most advanced language model currently publicly available. It's the one that like kind of made AI become a big thing that suddenly people were like, ooh, this feels a little too human. It has robust documentation available. It's easy to use, and it's easy for developers to access. Because of this, it's the one that you hear the most about. And like, it's also kind of become like shorthand, like the way you'd say Kleenex for tissues or Band-Aids instead of bandages. A lot of times people are talking about AI in general when they're talking about ChatGPT. So a note on permissible tools. The following tools are explicitly not to be used. This is the only two that I'm going to tell you guys right now not to use. The first one is Google Gemini, which is like somewhat integrated into Google Workspace, but there's like an interface where you chat with it. It's in beta, and they're collecting information from it for building their large language model, and they are actively storing the data. All of the large language models are like storing your data, and they'll tell you that. They have human reviewers in some situations. They may ask you for input. Again, this is why we're not putting confidential information. However, Google has like expressly told its users not to put any information that they don't want shared in it. So we're going to avoid it. We don't know exactly what they're doing with it. Their license agreement for it is like kind of fuzzy in what they're allowed to do with that information. They're actively using large amounts of human reviewers. It's for the best if we don't use it. And then the other one I want to caution you guys about is, so OpenAI is accessible to developers, as I said, and that's where ChatGPT lives. And their large language model is, oh, it is not open source. I did not change this. I did check it afterwards. It's accessible. It means any developer can access it to create an app. And OpenAI even links to these apps from ChatGPT. So like when you're in ChatGPT, there's a thing in the upper left-hand corner that says explore GPTs. The thing is that while these are built on OpenAI's platform, anyone can do this and they don't have to be dedicated to the same level of security and safety that OpenAI is. And they could, it's essentially a wrapper around those products. And that same wrapper could be skimming data. So OpenAI tries their best to keep this from happening, but that's not something that they're like doing. They're not making sure that each of these things is secure. So you could enter data in the app and get a ChatGPT answer essentially, but the app is also skimming that information and looking for patterns like email addresses, names, other identifying info. So like, don't use those because we can't properly vet each and every one of them. All right, so now the more exciting things. I know that was all very newsy and boring, but the first thing is you already have Copilot on your computer. So Microsoft is like a 48% owner or something like that of OpenAI, and they partnered with them to create the Copilot tool. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner of your computer, you should see the logo that's on your screen. That is, I think they were calling it a preview version, but it's actually just the free version now of Copilot. There's no longer the limitations on it they had originally put. It's in Windows 11, I think maybe 10, but if you're using a Mac or like something with Chrome OS, it won't be there. But it is a like Microsoft wrapped version of ChatGPT, essentially. It's pretty close. It uses the same engine as ChatGPT, but it's a more closed system. It's not like a closed system, but Microsoft has limited it. It has a lot more guardrails than ChatGPT does. So like, it's not going to like, you can't trick it into giving you instructions to make a bomb or something. It's like it's very guardrailed. And as a result, there are times where the information in it doesn't seem as thorough, but it's because it's like vetted and safer and meant for like schools and businesses to use. There's a paid version of the product as well that is like more customizable and has more features. But if you guys want to play with an AI system, it's right there for you. We're going to talk about mostly ChatGPT though, because that's the tool that I generally use for things. It gives me the best assistance, and it's something I'm experienced with and feel happy with the results I get from. So the way that you can access ChatGPT is by creating a free account at openai.com. And then you can navigate to the web interface, which is chat.openai.com. And then you're going to use your credentials to log in. And actually, I was going to put that in the chat for you guys. So OpenAI. And then the chat is located at chat.openai.com. So once you are, you have an account, you're able to log in. There are paid accounts. The paid accounts are better and can opt you out of sharing your information. So if that's something, if you want to like personally start putting in your entire life story and using ChatGPT as a therapist, I would recommend paying for it. But otherwise, the free account for most people is going to be sufficient. You do get less access to the most recent ChatGPT model during peak times because it takes so much computer brain power to run an AI system. But aside from that, the free account has most of the features that you would have from the paid account. So once you have your credentials, you can log in and start using it. Oops. So just a note on how large language models work. While they might seem like magic, they're not. They're not. It feels kind of eerily human. It's in that uncanny valley place. You're talking to a chat bot that sounds human. It's giving you human answers. It seems like it has emotions. It'll refer to itself in first person. So basically what they are, as I said this before, is like, it's like really, really good autocomplete. So your phone, if you have autocomplete on, when you type a text message, it's predicting the next word that you're going to say based on all the texts you've sent before. Like a lot of times you talk about this when you say that. And that's essentially what large language models are. they don't really think in advance. They search through their knowledge base for the terms you've given them. So you ask it a question, it uses those words as reference words, and then it generates each word in its answer based on the probability of it following the one before it. So it's only as good as the quality of the data that's fed to it. And the hope of the large language model is that the volume of data would correct for inaccuracies. And then this is important for you to know, though, because it means that you can get better answers by giving it the context you want to work in. So like if you tell it that you are working in this field or you need this information more specifically, you're going to get better answers. And asking it to create more context for itself will also help you. So we'll talk about that too. So here's some examples of things that you can use it for just in general. It feels very open, but questions, explanations, lists, instructions, and suggestions. So questions, like you could use it essentially the way you'd use Google. You could go like, what states are on the Gulf Coast? You could ask it much more complex questions than that. Like you can, instead of what states are on the Gulf Coast, give me a summary of the history of the states on the Gulf Coast would be a question you could ask it to. Explanations, what causes one hurricane season to be worse than another? It has access to domain knowledge, so it can give you a summary of that at a very base level. Lists, like you need a list of things to consider. You're trying to think through something helpful in brainstorming. You need a packing list to go on vacation. I'm going to X place. What 10 things would you say I should make sure I pack? You can ask it for instructions. I actually had ChatGPT help me with this particular presentation quite a bit. And I asked it for like suggestions, and it suggested instructions for baking a cake. And I would not recommend that. And we will talk about that momentarily. But that is an instructions you can ask. You can ask it for instructions for like how to bake a cake, how to knit a scarf. It'll give you instructions for sure. Suggestions would include things like recommend blank. You could ask it for a reading list. You could ask it for where you should go on vacation based on like the reasons that you give it. Okay, so we'll talk about, actually, I'm gonna do that now. Okay, so before we talk about like what prompt engineering is, I want you guys to know that large language models have a mind of their own. There's a thing that they do that developers and like scientists call hallucinating, where they'll just kind of babble. It doesn't make any sense. It starts like kind of directing its own responses. The models that we have access to as consumers generally have that pretty much in control, but it doesn't mean it never happens. Like there are guardrails to keep it from doing it. They can lie. It can just make up whatever. It's just doing the next best word. And then for reasons we don't totally understand, sometimes it can get lazy. So like you'll ask it to do something and it'll tell you it can't do that, but you know it can. So like I'll be like, help me with this Excel formula, and paste it in and be like, oh, I don't know Excel. And it's like, yeah, actually you do. So you'll have to tell it again that like, actually you do know Excel. Can you look at this formula? And it's a weird thing where you kind of have to be familiar with that. Because of this, and because it's just like predicting the next thing you're gonna say, always check any facts you get from a GPT. A kind of funny thing that has happened is Google's algorithm for like Google search has gotten worse. So they had a very clear trend of people typing in like a question and then the word Reddit afterwards. Like they wanted to search the website Reddit because they're like experts on Reddit. So when they were developing the AI thing that comes up now at the top when you search, they purchased Reddit's data. So now there are certain things that when you search for, it gives you joke answers because AI can't tell the difference between a joke and something serious unless you tell it's a joke. So there are like famous examples, if you guys look them up, but there are like things that say like, we've had 14 female presidents and like all this other stuff. Like if you search for certain things, you get like really weird answers. So always check any facts you get from a GPT. And then also remember, AI generated content is a starting point only. The same way you're going to check facts, you want to like do a sniff check for like it against your moral values and your like what you are doing specifically with domain knowledge. So we'll go back to now what prompt engineering is. Okay, so prompt engineering is an emerging field where people are like getting jobs where individuals craft effective prompts to guide AI models to produce desired outputs. So well-conceived and well-written prompts enhance AI performance. So like if you ask it a question in a specific way, you'll get better answers. A good prompt engineer understands AI behavior, is creative, and has extensive domain knowledge. So they know the area that they're asking about. They are creative in that, like, if they're not getting the answers that they think they should, they can ask it a different way. And they understand how AI works. Members of the AI field believe that prompt engineering will be essential in the future for optimizing AI interactions and maximizing productivity. So like there are certain jobs where like they're not going to go away, but they might become more of a prompt engineering job. So like that's like a thing that there's a lot of discussion about happening with like web developers and stuff. Like instead of like writing all of your code, you have to describe the behavior, and it's not like the outcome you want, it's like the steps you want. So in any case, OpenAI itself has a guide for prompting. This is linked here, and I'm gonna really briefly copy and paste this for you guys. No, but they have a guide for prompting that's like really good, and I would highly recommend checking it out if you're interested in any AI stuff. But basically, like there are main areas that are relevant to us. A lot of people do use it for like development and stuff, so it's not relevant to the way we would use it. But write clear instructions. So instead of just like telling it to do the thing, give it specific instructions about the thing. So like you can ask the model to adopt a persona, which I will show you guys in a minute, or you can specify the steps to complete the task. Instead of telling it to bake a cake, you would tell it to measure the ingredients and then put them in this order, that kind of thing, to get the result that you need. Because it's so context heavy, providing reference text can be really helpful. So like if, for instance, you wanted to like essentially like if you wanted to do a book report, you could like put the book in, but there's a fixed content length that you can use. So like you can't put the book in, but you could put in the Cliff Notes version of the book and then ask it to write a book report and it would do it. But providing the context, like a starting point, is really helpful because it gives it the space to operate in. You should split complex tasks into simpler subtasks. Asking it to do like a whole project for you is not a good way of handling it. Asking it to like assist you with this one thing is more helpful. Also, give the model time to quote unquote think. Again, they don't think, but have it come up with its own solution first before giving it something to evaluate. So like if you give it a math problem with the answer, even if the answer is wrong, it will tell you the steps to get that answer. Like if you're like, can you verify that this is correct? And it knows it wants you to verify it, it will verify it. So instead of that, giving it a solution, you're better off asking it the same question that you're trying to validate. You can also ask for its inner monologue or ask it leading questions to help give it the context that it needs. So like you can ask it to tell you through its thought process why it suggested the things that it's suggesting, and it'll give it additional context words that it's working from to predict the next best answer. Some other tips, just like from use, be concise and specific. If you ramble, it will too. Like if you put a whole paragraph in, it's going to give you a whole paragraph out. Like it matches tone, which also be polite because your tone influences the direction its answers go. Kind of treating it like a human is a better way of handling the GPT than a reference book. Like you're not going to type what you type in Google. It's kind of chatty. And if you have like a quote unquote rapport with it, you get better answers. And then specify the context you want to have it to have. So like large language models know everything. If you don't narrow it down what you're asking for, you're more likely to get generalized responses or responses from a different domain that you're working in, or just straight up incorrect things. If you give it more context, it's more likely to give you a correct answer. So these are specific prompt examples. This is probably the more valuable part of this, but of things that you could do to get better answers. So for instance, I've given you the option, like the idea of like listing things. List 5 things someone should consider when deciding where to evacuate for a hurricane. Instead of that, if I put in list 5 things someone should consider when deciding where to evacuate for a hurricane, but I add, before each item, I want you to think through what would make a good place to evacuate and explain your reasoning before you create the next example. And this is better because it asks the model to create its own context while it's working. So instead of it like making the list and then the last thing it's referencing is the list item before it, it's basically like reiterating the prompt and giving itself the context again. And here's another one. What causes one hurricane season to be worse than another? So I'm going to, instead of just asking that and getting like the 101 answer that comes up when you type that into Google, I'm going to say, you are a meteorologist who has worked in the Gulf Coast region for the past 20 years. Your area of expertise is hurricanes. What causes one hurricane season to be worse than another? And by doing this, I'm limiting the field of knowledge it's going to access. Instead of just like hitting the top of its hurricane knowledge, it's going to go, oh, meteorology, Gulf Coast, 20 years of history. I'm an expert in hurricanes. So it's going to go deeper into its knowledge base and like look for hurricane specific information and then look for your question. Here's another one. Give me steps to write a persuasive proposal. I'm writing a persuasive proposal to get assistance for homeowners impacted after a hurricane. I need to know what would convince my reader, what information would be helpful for you to have to help me with this. So instead of just being like, help me write this proposal, I'm one, narrowing the context. So I'm telling you what the proposal is for. I'm not just asking it for steps to write any specific persuasive proposal. I'm telling it that I'm asking for assistance for homeowners impacted after a hurricane, which is going to give it more information and like what might be convincing in that context. And instead of asking it to just like write the proposal, I'm asking it what information it wants from me. So instead of just being like, I work for this nonprofit, we have this much history, and I need help with this proposal, I'm asking what it wants to know because I might not have thought of everything. ChatGPT should act more like your assistant than like your boss. So you're like trying to ask it questions to help you along. So I'm going to do 3 examples in ChatGPT for you guys. What they're going to be is a SWOT analysis, so like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Help with polishing a difficult email and prepping for an interview, and show you like ways that I could use this when I'm working. So this is what it'll look like when you log into ChatGPT. So like, again, this is the thing I said, don't touch, don't use the general GPTs. It'll give you some sample prompts when you log in. You can add images, but also like I was playing with this earlier, and on the free account, you're limited and I can't play with the images again until like 3 o'clock. So just things to keep in mind, you have a limited number of those sorts of things. And like you get the higher level chat for the first part of it. But so first I'm going to ask it for the SWOT analysis. But before I do that, I'm going to, when you start a chat with it, it creates an instance and it uses context from that instance to develop your answers. So first I'm going to tell it that the nonprofit organization I work for rebuilds houses after natural disasters, primarily in the Gulf Coast region. I want you to keep this in mind. And it's like telling you what's on your mind. So it wants to know how I want to use that information that I've just told it. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask for a SWOT analysis. And I'm going to say, you're an experienced business consultant, and I'm trying to provide assistance to a rural community where a tornado has recently hit. Can you perform a SWOT analysis on this project? So I'll hit enter. And you can see it's starting to like give me all of that. So this is a really useful thing because anytime you're asking it to brainstorm for you, it might think of things you're not thinking of. It's like having a partner talk through something with you. So here it's showing you like, here's a strength, like you have a network of volunteers and donors, you have a track record. As a nonprofit, you might face constraints and resources, though. That's a weakness. You have time constraints. There's the potential burnout, opportunities. There's like grants and funding that might be available, local engagement, threats, additional unpredictable weather, community needs, that kind of thing. So this is a really good like place to start thinking. So now that I've asked it for that SWOT analysis, we're going to move on. Completely different question. So let's say that I am super behind on a project that's due tomorrow, and I'm telling my boss, Keith, that I will not have it done, and I want help telling him that. So I'm going to paste this in here. And what I've done is said, hi, I wrote this email to my boss. What concerns might he have that I'm missing? How would you improve this email? So I'm giving it reference information, and it says, hi, Keith, can I get more time for the project due Friday? I'm really behind and having trouble finishing it. I know I should have started sooner, but it's been hard. A few more days would help a lot. I'm trying to get it done right. Thanks, Kristen. So if I hit enter, so it says, your email is clear, but it could be more effective by addressing potential concerns. Here's a revised version. And it says, I'm writing to request an extension, like it improves the quality of my writing. I want to ensure the final product meets our high standards. It has become more persuasive. Specifically, briefly explain any particular issues or obstacles if relevant, such as unexpected complications. To address these issues and deliver with our own high quality project, I would appreciate an additional, and then giving it like an expectation. I understand the importance of meeting deadlines. And then like here it addresses like some of the other things I asked for, which are like the reason for it, how it will prevent it in the future, because I'm not meeting expectations. It's telling me I should provide context, specify the extension that's needed, and reinsure an update. And this will help me make a more professional email. So again, like I didn't provide it with any like genuinely confidential or sensitive information. So that's the only thing you want to do is like, if you were putting information in here, confirm that you have anonymized it and removed anything that would be considered sensitive, but you can absolutely put in stuff that you have written. And then the last example I was going to show you guys was like prepping for an interview. So let's say we have my nonprofit that I told it about has just reached a milestone of 4,000 homes completed during the 16 years we've been incorporated. The local news is going to do a live interview with me today. I'm really nervous. So can you think of 5 questions the reporter might ask? Before each question, knowing that you're a hard-hitting journalist, share your internal monologue about why you are asking the question and what kind of scoop you might get by asking me it. So I'm nervous that I'm going to get backed into a corner and I'm not going to have an answer. So I'm giving it like a worst case scenario and prepping myself for it. Yeah, so here you go. So it's telling you exactly what I asked for it. What was the most challenging aspect of reaching the milestone of 4,000 homes? And like internal monologue, I'm asking us to highlight the obstacles that demonstrate the resilience and problem solving capabilities. It's an opportunity to showcase the human side. Can you share a memorable story? How have the needs for disaster relief might change? So it's like giving me like, instead of just giving me the question, it's telling me why it's asking me the question, which will give me the opportunity to think of a correct answer for it. And you could ask it to do this for 50 questions. It doesn't have to be 5. Like, what are your next goals? And it's like, oh, I have to make sure that I have like a presentable version of our strategy available. So those are just some examples of how it can be used. I really recommend looking at the OpenAI resource that I shared with you guys, and also just like online in general. You can also ask ChatGPT what it can help you with, and it will tell you, which is delightful. It'll tell you ways that you could be using it that you're not, and like ways that you could describe your job and ask it what it would do. But yeah, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Does anyone have any questions or want me to try putting in anything? Anybody? Nobody? Great. That's fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And then I was able to record this, as was super exciting to figure out. So I will ask Kyle to send that out. But thank you guys for listening. And if you have any additional questions about AI, please reach out. I'm happy to talk you through it. Someone's off mute. No? Okay. All right. Thanks, y'all.